Welcome back to Klepper's Corner, Today in History, the show where we bravely ask, what happened on this date in history? And why does it feel like everyone back then was making decisions after drinking from a questionable water source? Today is January 3rd, a date that has served as the cosmic crossover episode for politics, war, religion, space exploration, and even cryptocurrency bros who definitely peaked in 2017. January 3rd is also the day Earth hits perihelion, meaning this is the point in the year when our planet is closest to the sun. Ironically, this is also when half the country is colder than a mother-in-law's stare. So yes, January 3rd is basically nature's way of saying, I can literally be right next to the sun and still have zero warmth for you. We've got revolutions, battles, coups, moon robots, crypto, Tolkien, Meiji reformers, George Washington pulling off a Tom Cruise stunt without a single waiver, and a dictator surrendering because the U.S. military blasted Van Halen at him. Let's dive in. Segment 1, a coup, a flag, and a federal breakup. January 3rd builds or breaks nations. January 3rd is the day when entire governments said, you know what? Let's change everything before lunch. We start in 1868, when Japan hit the factory reset button with the Meiji Restoration. Picture samurai from Satsuma and Choshu rolling up to Kyoto like, hey Shogun, you've had 265 years. Love what you've done with the place. But the whole no industry, no military modernization, no iron ships because boats should be made of wood like God intended thing, yeah, that's over. They seized the palace, restored the emperor, and transformed Japan from a feudal cosplay convention into an industrial powerhouse that would later go toe-to-toe with Russia. Meanwhile, the shogunate just watched it all happen like a kid who finally realizes his parents really were serious about turning the basement into a Pilates studio. Then, in 1833, Britain reasserts control of the Falkland Islands, basically telling Argentina, hey, we're taking these rocks in the ocean now. Don't ask why. Empire stuff. Argentina was understandably not thrilled. This is the imperial equivalent of someone taking your lunch at work and then leaving a sticky note saying, please do not remove property of Steve. Next up, Alaska statehood, 1959. President Eisenhower signs off, and suddenly, America gains 586,000 square miles, the oil jackpot, and the strategic real estate equivalent of saying, we would like to live closer to the USSR, please. And yes, this is also when the U.S. had a 49-star flag. A flag so temporary that if it were a TV show, it would have been canceled before the pilot finished airing. Then we jump to 1958. The creation of the West Indies Federation, a short-lived governmental experiment that dissolved faster than a New Year's resolution gym membership. Jamaica and Trinidad began arguing about taxes in capital cities like two siblings trying to divide a bedroom with duct tape. Finally, in 1848, Liberia inaugurates its first president, Joseph Jenkins Roberts, proving you can go from being born free in Virginia to running the first independent African republic. Something the United States wouldn't officially acknowledge until the Civil War, because the U.S. government back then treated diplomacy like a group project they were hoping to avoid. Segment 2, the Battle of Princeton. George Washington outruns Winter and Cornwallis. January 3rd, 1777, the day George Washington pulled off the Continental Army equivalent of sneaking out a window during the sleepover. Cornwallis thinks he has Washington cornered. Washington responds by leaving campfires burning, pretending to dig trenches, sneaking away down a frozen back road with the entire army. Basically, he home aloned the British. At Princeton, General Hugh Mercer gets overwhelmed. The Americans begin to panic, and Washington rides into the smoke like every painting of him you've ever seen was actually based on this single moment. Musket balls flying, horses screaming, militia breaking, and Washington just strolling through it like he's trying to get a better view at a concert. The Americans rally. Alexander Hamilton fires a cannonball through Nassau Hall and accidentally performs the first known instance of American college vandalism. And the British retreat. Without Princeton, the revolution collapses. With Princeton, France eventually goes, oh, you can win? All right then. Let's annoy Britain together. Segment 3. Noriega, metal music, and an embassy. January 3rd ends a dictatorship. Fast forward to 1990. The U.S. invasion of Panama is underway. Manuel Noriega flees to the Vatican embassy, believing holy ground will protect him. Enter the U.S. military psychological operations team. Their strategy? Blast heavy metal at him 24/7. Van Halen, The Clash, probably some early Metallica. Basically the soundtrack of a dude named Brad who owns 3 leather jackets and refuses to vacuum. Imagine being a Vatican official trying to pray while Panama is rattling the stained glass. On January 3rd, Noriega gives up, walks outside, and surrenders. Proof that even dictators cannot withstand the raw power of 80s rock blasted at ungodly volume. Segment 4. Assassinations, ballistic missiles, and an almost war. January 3rd in the Middle East. Jump to 2020, when the U.S. drone strike kills Qasem Soleimani, Iran's most powerful military figure besides the supreme leader. This was the geopolitical equivalent of kicking a hornet's nest, a beehive, and a wasp nest all at the same time while yelling, "Don't worry, I've got this." Iran retaliates with ballistic missiles. Iraq demands the U.S. leave, and everyone else goes, "Cool, cool, cool. So we're doing World War III on a Friday then." January 3rd, never boring. Segment 5, breakups, treaties, and Delaware being Delaware. In 1961, the U.S. breaks diplomatic ties with Cuba because Castro took American assets and Eisenhower said, "Nope." This freeze lasts until 2015, making it one of the longest silent treatments in geopolitical history. Exactly 1 year later, Pope John XXIII excommunicates Castro because apparently January 3rd is when everyone piles on. Then in 1993, Bush and Yeltsin signed START II, the big nuclear arms reduction treaty. A moment of hope so pure, it feels like it must have happened in an alternate universe. And in 1861, Delaware rejects secession with perfect clarity. "We were the first state and we'll be the last to bail." The Union says, "Great, because we really needed someone in this family to make healthy decisions." Segment 6, from Da Vinci to Bitcoin. January 3rd invents the future. January 3rd has given us technological leaps ranging from 1496. Leonardo da Vinci attempts a flying machine test. It fails. But honestly, so does every first draft of every science fair project ever. 1957, world's first electric watch. Great if you wanted a watch that didn't keep accurate time and needed batteries. 1977, Apple Computer incorporates. Ron Wayne sells his 10% stake for $800 in what remains the worst financial decision not involving NFTs. 2004, Spirit rover lands on Mars, performs 6 years of science despite being designed for 90 days, making it the opposite of every appliance in your house. 2019, China lands Chang'e 4 on the far side of the moon. Historic achievement. Also, proof that China absolutely loves sending robots where no one can double-check their homework. 2009, Bitcoin's Genesis block is mined. Crypto bros are born, and they have not stopped talking since. Segment 7, religion, rebellions, and breaking up with the Pope. January 3rd, 1521, Martin Luther is officially excommunicated by Pope Leo X because apparently stapling 95 complaints to a church door is frowned upon. Luther responds by effectively inventing Protestantism, proving that the best revolutions begin with someone posting an angry note. In 1653, the Coonan Cross Oath in India marks one of the first major rebellions against European authority. Thousands swear they will not submit to Portuguese clergy. A bold stance, especially considering Portugal really liked forcing people to submit to things. Segment 8, Tolkien, Aretha, and Lord Haw-Haw. January 3rd's cultural chaos. Happy birthday to J.R.R. Tolkien, born January 3rd, 1892. The man who made fantasy mainstream and guaranteed that bookstores everywhere would stock at least 5 different covers of The Hobbit at all times. January 3rd is also the day Aretha Franklin becomes the first woman inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1987. A much-needed correction, considering rock was built on the work of women who did not get nearly enough credit. Meanwhile, in 1946, Lord Haw Haw is executed for treason after broadcasting Nazi propaganda. His defense was basically, "I wasn't really British, so this doesn't count," which is about as convincing as a guy saying he shouldn't get a speeding ticket because the car technically belonged to his cousin. We also have aviation disasters, new Indiana legislative sessions, and the founding of New Harmony, America's most ambitious utopian community, and also one of its fastest to fall apart, proving that humans are simply not built to share. In conclusion, January 3rd is a day of beginnings, endings, coups, revolutions, scientific leaps, and one dictator surrendering because of Van Halen. It has shaped nations, launched technologies, redefined religions, and sent robots to places humans still aren't brave enough to visit. It's a date that reminds us that history does not happen slowly. It happens in sudden bursts of insanity, genius, conflict, and creativity. January 3rd is a highlight reel of humanity being unbelievably messy and unbelievably impressive at the same time. Thank you for joining us on Klepper's Corner Today in History. And remember, history repeats itself, but it almost never picks a convenient day to do it.